Hello everyone, how are you all doing? Today, as I'm sitting here in my element, alright, got my bag holding my laptop in place, and in nature, where I'm doing another video on a particular issue. It's going to be a long one, so prepare for that. But it is about OnlyFans banning explicit content. Now, what really do we mean by explicit? Because if we take, for example, explicit violent content, as we've seen in a lot of society, we have no problem limiting that in video games, movies, music. Violence, even though explicit, is being shown all around popular media. But the violence in real life, you want to remain hidden from the world. And it's the same thing with sexual content. What is explicit? Because we have porn everywhere, and what you're claiming to be explicit content on OnlyFans, I've seen people do worse on Snapchat. Like, there was a trend going around for a long time called Snapchat porn, where you see like the most explicit content. As far as I know, that was never banned. As far as porn and the restrictions, that's everywhere to see. Even in my generation, 12-year-olds could find it no problem. And with social media, wow. If they haven't found it yet by the age of 7. I'm saying, with banning explicit content on OnlyFans, who are you really protecting? Because as extreme as people of the Muslim community react to feminine liberty in the West, is what you're doing with these actions any different from what they are doing in the East, in the Middle East? So who are you protecting? Because you're not protecting these women. You're not. Matter of fact, women on their own made more money than ever. What you're really protecting is the outdated Western society, which with its many limitations, people are waking up to. Recognizing that whatever talents you have or don't have, depending on the point of view on the person you're having this discussion with, which is also why I do these things on my own. Because rarely have I found an individual who can look at this from different perspectives and come with the reality of what these actions are really entailing. I am sorry, as I'm in the park, you can't help but watch beautiful women walk around in the park. Not staring though, just looking. There's a difference for all the men out there watching. There's a difference between looking, staring, and undressing them with your eyes. So, pick the one, and I prefer the first option. Staring is, well, at the beach, but that's just me. No one has to be like me, as long as you are you, and not whatever this society makes you to be. Coming back to what OnlyFans, banning OnlyFans explicit content is like regulating the crypto investment world after the GameStop incident. Because people are making money too fast, too much. And the society which it's built under can't handle that. Because in any way, shape, or form, the system that Western society created needs to have a stranglehold on you. It needs to have a hold on you any way there can. And any form, as you've seen in the last year and a half, that deviates from that hold is wrong. Same thing as why prostitution isn't legal. It's the same reason why Tinder and Bumble and all those other dating sites exist. It's to have the hold on you. And I'm not blaming any of the Tinder, Bumble, because all these programs have ever done is feed off of the ancient old American Western exploitation type narrative, which is sex is meant to sell. And a good salesman sells you something. I've said this many times. A good salesman, and I've worked in sales, so I can tell you about that. A good salesman will sell you something you don't need. A great salesman will sell you something you don't need that you can get for free. The reason why all these systems exist in the first place is because to get men, how to say it, not to get men addicted, but to keep the economic hold on both men and women. The only reason there is a gender war is because the difference between men and women, of how we view men and women, and what masculinity and femininity and the definition of it really mean, are so intertwined with one another where no one can see clearly. But the reality of it is, sex is meant to sell. So anything that I can sell you that in reality you can get for free, who's playing who? That has been, if you look at what's happening in pop culture right now, you've had women like Britney Spears be the poster child for that system long before OnlyFans. But we're getting back to that. Had a stranglehold on it long before all of this. Women who've been exploited by that particular old narrative, and women who have taken that narrative, like a Beyonce or a Jennifer Lopez or a Shakira, who have made it their own, who recognize that their sexuality is to be empowering and to be made their own, and not to be tied to a system that only aims to profit off of what they give the world, which is a perspective of the feminine, which is freedom of expression. For most masculine men, that freedom of expression is masculinity, which 90% of the time will be presented in the form of physical empowerment. With women, as I've stated, that empowerment may not always translate into physical. Although, with the beauty of the fitness world, women can find their strengths there too. And just as women can find empowerment in multiple aspects of this beautiful human life, men can find it too. However, having that be expressed in a vulnerable, sexually empowering feminine manner has not always been accepted. Particularly because Western society does not expect that of men. Because Western society, the system, which exploits, might I say, men as well as women, but we have been fooled in thinking it's only been women who have been brainwashed by the system. The thinking that we're the only ones that have succumbed to sexual exploitation. It has been the same for men. As someone who was not accepted neither by the male community in the Western world, I was set out on a journey to find my own me, my own self. And just as many other young men today, no matter their geographical background, spiritual background, or visual background, I too have been brainwashed and tricked into getting part in the exploitation world of male and feminine expression. But we're getting a bit off topic here, so I'm getting back to the feminine aspect of what is happening with OnlyFans banning explicit content. Reality of the matter of fact is, if women take their sexual freedom into their own hands, that's a big no-no for the capitalist system. Because sex needs to continue selling. And I cannot sell if my product is out there presenting itself on their own terms. Now, I watched the documentary American Pimp because I was curious as to why men and women in that particular underground urban aspect of life would engage in both behaviors. And we all know that as much as we fear prostitution, it's been there since the beginning of time. Sex has always been a measure of wealth. But to whom? Because as we've seen in a lot of aspects of Western way of living, if we cannot exploit it or export it, or more likely control the flow of which sexual expression and freedom goes, I've always said, in the shifts that are happening today, every era has had their specific topic of what was controversial. See, in my era, when I was a teenager, it was violence in video games. That was the big topic. That was a big controversy in my era. Before that, we had violence in music. So in every form of popular media, we've had an era of controversy. See, it ended with my era in violence in the expression of violence in popular media. However, this era talks about sex. How do we talk about sex? How do we communicate with each other about our sexual wants and needs? How do we express that without harming the other person? Which I will say has been a particular issue, because, you know, my Canadian brothers Abba and Preach said it very well, and it got me thinking, reflecting upon personal experiences where sexual liberation. See, I'm all for sexual freedom on both parties. But freedom without responsibility and or accountability will ultimately lead to chaos. When the purpose of the real truth about sex really is, you would think twice of just, for men and women, to just throwing it out there. Unless you know yourself. We seek a connection with someone else before we seek connection with ourselves. We seek a connection everywhere except within ourselves. For only within ourselves is the gateway to the divine more clear. Sex, believe it or not, in many cultures, is a gateway to the divine. Sex is like death. They get you closer to the divine. In Eastern philosophies, that is very clear. Kama Sutra. There's a book written about that. So, to say that sex does not have a spiritual context to it, whatever gender you claim yourself to be, it really boils down to, who are you protecting by doing this? Because the reality of the matter is, they're not protecting anyone except their own pockets, in order to keep the hold on all genders more strongly. That is the real reason why OnlyFans is banning explicit content. Because you never had to go there for the content you can get anywhere else. Pornhub and a lot of other websites made that very easy. On your phone, on your laptop, anywhere you go. So there really is no accurate reason, other than the one I've just stated, why OnlyFans is banning explicit content. And as you've seen, what has happened in many other places around the world, including Afghanistan, taking away people's liberty, freedom of their bodies, and calling it protection, is like selling me drugs and calling it a cure. It's selling me shit and calling it caviar. They're protecting the system. they're not protecting you at all. They're not protecting women, and they're not protecting men. The only solid protection there is for the current gender war that is out there is communication, which we are very knowledgeable to do on the internet, but never been able to do face to face. Why? Ego. Because the real truth about one another might scare one another. And as I'm sitting right now, I can tell you that my life's great. Scratch that. I can also tell you that, again, women have not been the only ones. Men, like me, have been brainwashed as well. Not by women, but by a system, a culture that will tell you this is the way to get the attention of the opposite sex. You have to be a certain way, dress a certain way, behave a certain way in order for you to be accepted by the opposite sex. Or the same sex, depending, it's varied out there. But when it comes to OnlyFans and the discussion of it, I really, it's the opposite sex that has the focus here in this conversation. But really, women, we would like to hear, as men, your take on this. For, in all honest truth, when it comes to, and also my video of the Cuties trailer, we really don't hear women a lot in this conversation. I haven't heard that after OnlyFans was banning their explicit content, I didn't hear a lot of women on this. But the system is just geared to pitting us against each other for sexual exploitation. Like, there's so many directions this can go, so forgive my pause. Also, I'm very much in tune with my own environment. The focus is there, but I can't help but dream in this particular state I am. But this has been for women explicitly. I had my brother William tell me, like, yeah, you're surprisingly pro-women. I don't know exactly why or what intent he had with him saying that, but I've always said we can't deny that women have been limited in their ability to express themselves. And the way for women to express themselves and to feel empowered is by expressing their sexuality. Me, as a man, I love dancehall because it is honest about the relationship between man and woman. Now, granted, they're very, I wouldn't say anti-gay, but they're very proud of their heterosexual nature. And I'm not combating that, and I'm not going against that. The reason I'm saying this is because I want to give an accurate dance hall music is the honest connection between male and female. No matter where you are, it is loved everywhere. Because for those of you who are saying that, yeah, it's basically sex with having your clothes on, how do you think other cultures in the past chose their mate? It was through dancing. It was through energetically connecting in a physical manner before you, as man or woman, exposed vulnerability, openness. Because when it comes to the real nature of sex, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know or if you had to figure it out, sex is more than just exchanging organs, exchanging fluids, and exchanging time. It is a gateway to the divine. It is a spiritual coming together of two universes forming the one. The creator of us all. Mother Earth creating life. Life creating life. Which is what it really is. But as Western society has done so well, taken all that is pure and turning it into profit. But unless they can control that profit, it is not acceptable for any one, female mostly, but also male. But this topic has to do about females, so whether you're male or female, if they cannot control your freedom of expression, they cannot control, exploit it, or profit from it, then it's unacceptable. But yet they're calling themselves the land of the free. Who are you fooling? Talking versus action are completely different things. Completely different. And to understand this issue is to get in touch with your feminine side. No matter who you are. When it's being said that the future is feminine, it is true. But just because you're born a female does not make you feminine. We have learned that throughout some time, I feel. I believe. Because just because you're born with male genitalia does not give you the right to call yourself a man. And it's the same in reverse for women. Now again, not to exclude the LGBTQ community, but the reason that OnlyFans is banning their explicit content is largely to do because of the heterosexual aspects of it. Not that you're excluded, but in this particular topic you're not necessarily included. There's probably not the right words to say, but gotta say it like it is. And to understand the feminine is to dive within yourself. Because only within yourself lies the truth of who you are. And once you understand who you are, you understand that all this talk about protecting women is really protecting women from a freedom that someone else cannot control. I say again, the only protection that these actions of OnlyFans and other like-minded content out there is to protect women from a freedom that others cannot control, exploit, and profit from. That's all there is to it. Now, how would we solve these issues more properly is by education. Educating our youth. Now, how early that is entirely upon the child's development. As a man coming from the Caribbean culture, by the time I was 12, I was surrounded with girls who were fully grown women, who were developed, matured in a faster and different method than men do. Now, women mature faster in varied aspects of life. I was going to say all, but that has pretty much been debunked by a lot of other content out there. So, bear with me. But, yeah. We all mature differently in all aspects of life. Education and talking to our youth, depending on the time they develop. Because as a young teenager out there, I wasn't being taught anything about it. You're thrown in the wilderness, men and women, with your hormones and people telling you what you can or cannot do. And as much as I've always said to seek guidance and wisdom from any other aspect, the only way to truly know how to live your life is to live it. And that goes for women as well as men. And communication is the proper way to solving these issues. But taking away women's liberty to express themselves, to empower themselves, and to make use of their freedom to create a better future, a better life for themselves in any other way that isn't controlled by the capitalist system, is not protecting anyone. Except those who have, since the beginning of the 50s and 60s, exploited women for other men's profit. And just as the term sex sells, they need to keep the wheel, the cog of the machine going. And they can only do that if they can control how you express yourself and how you present yourself. As long as they can keep, for men as well as women, that hold on you, they're the ones taking away your liberty. Because the future is feminine in more ways than one. But I say again, just because you're born a female does not make you feminine. A lot of changes have been occurring. Forgive my pause. I'm seeing beautiful birds gathering closer by as I'm filming and creating. Forgive me for these pauses. But in my element, I truly witness the beauty of life. As with women, there's beauty in practically a lot of them. Of course, there's the other side, but that's, like with men, a video for another time, but a conversation that has to be had. But the system is geared toward pitting men and women against one another for the profit of a few. To keep us confused about what really connects men and women. Because the separation of men and women in all aspects of life profits those who seek to make sex continuously sell. And to not have men and women take that into their own hands. Because that would mean free from the hold. Free from the system. Which I tell again, and I've said many times, the system needs to keep a hold on you any way they can. It's not just men. Because when they talk about men in general, it's like they're saying all men. As I've been accused, as when I say women in general, that they think I mean all women. A lot of people don't know their own language. Just because we say in general, never says all. Unless you hear me say all, when I say in general, we do not mean all. So, the gender war that has been going on is simply because not only lack of communication, but lack of wanting unification. And instead want to control and possess one another, whether it be male or female, in a relationship. And I have been witness to both. In my upbringing, in my personal dating life, as well as socially amongst my own peers. My generation is really the one that had to figure that out on their own. And the older generation who barely had a clue. But having said that, it is up to the younger generation to free themselves from that hold. Be honest with yourself if you can be honest to someone else. Because liberty without consequence ultimately leads to not only yourself being harmed, but others around you. And you'll spend your whole life cleaning up the karmic debt that you don't realize you're creating. Because life is like sex, believe it or not. It's give and take. When you give, you also take. But people seem to take more than they give, which is why it creates the karmic cycle. And you'll spend your whole life righting the wrongs that you don't know where it's coming from. And believe me, for everyone in this age of Aquarius that we're living in, which is the age of clarity, a lot of people are gaining clarity very quickly. Straightening my back and abdominals because I've had a heck of a workout yesterday. But I would love to have more conversations with males as well as females on this issue, especially the younger generations, because we seem to not know. We do know, but we don't act on it. And that's a lesson I'm learning every day, again and again. Just because you know something doesn't mean you'll hold on to it forever. Like even myself, every once in a while I need a reminder of the lessons I know but seem to get lost in the sauce along the way to this life's journey. Having said that, however, I will say that unity can be achieved as men stop trying to dominate and women stop trying to claim. And that's why I'm saying we're being taught very early on for men to dominate and conquer as many women as possibly can. And on the other side, women get taught to claim and hold on to a specific male or love interest as long as and hard as possibly can. And the reality is, you cannot know what you want unless you know who you are. And you don't know who you are unless you find yourself within. Now that lesson is easier said than done. It takes time for both men and women, and it takes, beyond all else, patience with yourself and one another. Only then do you recognize the truth of not only yourself, but also those around you. Knowing your own true nature, everyone else's becomes more clear. Knowing others is strength. Knowing yourself is true power. Lao Tzu. So, for men as well as women, knowing yourself, you have a better chance of knowing one another. And having said that, it is also very easy then to communicate and have a healthier relationship with each other when you've embraced within you your feminine and your masculine, no matter what sex or gender you were born with. And that is really the true essence of what it means to be your own man and your own woman. Is knowing the positives and negative aspects of both and unifying them within you before you seek unification in the outside world. that is the way to stop the gender war and to live healthy, no matter what lifestyle you choose to live. Because you can live whatever life you want if you know who you are and know what you don't want as well as what you do want. Because we've been brainwashed as well that everyone has to live by the same rules, even though we're not built that way. When it comes to relationships, and I've said it many times, I do not disapprove of the philosophy behind Kevin Samuels, who's been very trending and does, as a male figure, say stuff that does, in one particular way, resonate as what I've had to learn. However, his method and his philosophy applies for people who want to live one particular sort of way, which is to be in a marriage, particularly a Western marriage, which I can tell from personal experience and my own upbringing. If you have no knowledge of yourself, your true nature, and who the partner, whether it be husband, wife, or the same sex, you choose, if you don't know yourself as well as them, the chances are of that type of relationship succeeding is very slim to none. Also, not everyone is made for that type of relationship. Not everyone is meant to have that particular type of relationship, even though we all crave it and claim it and desire it and want it. It took me 3 very painful relationships for me to realize that that was not the way I was meant to live my life. And fool me once, fool me twice, fool me thrice, well, I don't need to go any further. Really, once I figured out that side of myself, it's easy to say that however love shows up at my life, what form it takes, what body it presents itself with, only after loving myself, only after giving to myself, can you really, truly, fully commit to someone else. And the Western version of marriage, unfortunately, is never lasting. Because it's not based on life, it is based on a perception of life. Which, given the many options there are in today's world, going through a relationship like that means navigating yourself. You can navigate yourself by learning about yourself. Your roots, your body, your mind, and your soul. What raises it? Vibration. What lowers your frequency? What lifts you up? What keeps you grounded? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What makes you furious? What makes you ecstatic? This I've had to learn the hard way, I might add, but the greatest achievements are often done by those who took the road very few people took. therefore, with everything that is going on right now, it is more important than ever to learn about who you are in this particular set of the world. Because we all hold the fate of our worlds in our own hands. As long as you don't lose that which is the world. The world you're actually in versus the world you create in here. Now, how does this relate to the topic on which we started this whole conversation with? Know the truth about yourself and you know the truth about the system. Know the truth about the system and you recognize that it does whatever it can, in any way, shape, or form it can, to keep its hold on you. Whether it be through financial means, whether it be through social means, or whether it be by sexual means. Particularly the heterosexual version of that. Which is why we are having this conversation today. Because ultimately, whatever outside relationship you seek, whether it be on the screen or in real life, if you seek no connection with your real self, then all the efforts of trying to achieve that knowledge by external means becomes useless. Now, how do we get to that journey, which will be explained in another video for another time. But I will give you a hint. It has to do with philosophy. Whether you've read it or lived it. The one that you've developed over time, or the one that had been given to you by the previous generation. Whichever one you decide, ultimately will determine your perception of this reality that we're in. Ultimately, that will decide how you interact with yourself is how you interact with others. And onlyfans has only given those of a specific nature for those who cannot seem in this world of many options to make a decision and find themselves living with their decision. Ultimately, that choice falls upon the individual making the choice. Whether you're a man or a woman, we're all capable of the same lessons. To make the lessons and to learn from the lessons. Whichever one you ultimately choose will determine through what lens you view said world. Because ultimately, that will determine in a certain set of time how you'll spend the rest of your existence, how grand or how impermanent it is living. That is reality. That is a gift. The knowledge of ourselves and the knowledge of each other in our forms of sexual expression. sexuality is empowering. It is empowering to give as it is to take. To feel each other on a level that is beyond just the physical or the mental. It is a spiritual connection between two individuals experiencing the greatest gift of life, which is ultimately love. And that is a journey we spend our whole lives looking forward to and never finding it because we don't seek it here. We seek it out there. We seek external validation in any form because in reality we lack within ourselves. We lack in here. And it took taking a lot of L's in life to get me to that realization. And for those out there who feel like they're being deliberately blamed for a societal problem, a societal norm, really, that society itself hasn't figured out which direction to go. Because we give up everything for so little. Freedom for the illusion of protection, and we trade in $1 for the violation of our spiritual, metaphysical, human rights within this plane and many other forms of existence on this plane. The many perspectives that are held and held from now on, since history's time till the end. To all the men out there who find it very empowering to put other women down and insulting them for expressing themselves in whatever form of liberty they choose. This does not make you a man. It makes you lesser than. I would go as far to say it makes you less. And recently, I have been confronted with that as well. An ex of mine who spiritually, physically, and mentally violated my boundaries. I confronted her after a very long time because she took that from me which I held personally. The sense of knowledge, the sense of me, and the sense of who I meant to be. Now, where does this lead to? I will tell you. Because in a society, we view only men as takers, when a lot of women do the same. And this is not a bashing of women. Absolutely not. Though she was a clear example that I had a lot to learn on particular aspects took my power back. In not a nice way. But neither did she take from me in the nicest way. And seeing what's happened with the young individual out there who Abba confronted on the podcast, I will say this to this young brother. Don't make the mistakes I did. Even though I've overcome a lot of situations where it could have been very different for me as well. And I've had to learn that certain belief systems you may hold and think they're yours. They are not. More often than not, we absorb that from the content we consume, the music we listen to, the movies, the video games. Because when you recognize that everything in you is 95% water, all the vibrations in your environment ultimately end up, in good and bad, positive and negative, make part of who you identify yourself as. And the way you have chosen to identify yourself as, at one point in time, I was that individual. But not understanding where it came from led me to making these unwise decisions. And to this particular young brother out there, I say this. Doing that, even with the best of intentions, does not always mean you're in the right. Even with the best of intentions, as we've learned throughout history, you can still do the wrong thing. And even with the most selfish of intentions, you can still do the right thing. So if there's anything I can give you, my brother, is be selfish if you must for unselfish reasons. There has been a lot of mistakes I made getting to talking to this topic as well. Addicted to pornography, going to prostitutes every chance I got, with, again, I say the right intentions, because I didn't want to bother women in the club just because I needed to get my fix. And honestly, I didn't want to be bothered. Because there have been a lot of women, and again, not saying all women, but the reason I withheld interaction with the opposite sex for the longest time is because in my upbringing, I saw the hypocrisy of relationships. I saw the twistedness of upholding vows that no one ever kept. Neither male nor female. And fearing going through the same situation, I did what I did. Whenever I needed my fix, pornography. Because I was not given the tools, not given the education, neither given the knowledge of how to properly navigate yourself as a human being with all that was going on. Is the best way I can describe it at this moment. So, having said that, I did a lot of porn. I've also slept with a lot of prostitutes. There is no shame to say that I've learned a lot from these women, and recognizing that not everyone who enters into a form of sexual expression in exchange for money is necessarily doing it for the same reason. Just because there's a lot of enjoyment to be had doesn't mean there aren't risks. Everything in life, nothing is achieved without sacrifice. So whatever treasure you find, there's some digging that has to happen. And usually it is done with the inner self. And having said that, I'm closing off this. It was tend to be longer, but I've gotten a lot more off topic, because this issue is not just an internet thing. It's not just a man and woman thing. It's not just a culture thing. It's a society thing. And historically, it has expressed itself in so many different variations. You cannot help but go off script, as a lot of people would say. Not sure if that's the best, but it's the best that my system can come up with at this particular time and place. Having said that, there's a lot of static at the moment, which is good because we are aligning. And having said that, we are ever more so evolving. But let's not go back where we should move forward. But as Lao Tzu always said, sometimes to move forward is to go back to who you really are. Recognizing who you really are versus what society wants you to be. Versus what society claims of you. Waking up to that truth is the easiest way to your spiritual freedom, your mental freedom, and also your manifestation and your realization of your freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good day, and as always, namaste. Taue kalwatate koanaka ua kala. Till we meet again in all sun's grace. Till next time.